Hey, it's Ducky, and this feels really weird. I haven't filmed in months, and because of that and the topic of this video, it's going to be heavily scripted. I've got my script here, so yeah. My last video was posted on the 19th of March, and today is the 28th of June. I will explain where I've been, how I'm doing, and what's going to be happening going forward in this video. Whilst I'm talking, I will be having the drawing process for, this is massive, those two drawings. So yeah, I actually drew those ages ago. The video was filmed probably in January, I think. I was still really new to my Voodoo markers. Yeah, so I did the same drawing twice, once in just pointillism and then once in Voodoo markers with a bit of pen work over the top. Right now I can't remember which one goes first in the recording, but you will see in a minute. So where have I been? I have put a couple updates on Instagram and the community tab over the last couple months, but I know most people probably wouldn't have seen that. And buckle in, I am pretty sure this will be a long one. Trigger warning, I will be talking about hospitals, strokes, death and grief. If those topics are too heavy or difficult for you currently, please don't watch this video. Be kind to yourself. I will have plenty of videos coming in the future that are a lot less intense. Unless you want to see the art process, then you can always pause this mute this video and watch the art process. I don't know if that would be very interesting, but there you go. So I'm gonna take my bracelets off because they are driving me insane. In March, my dad came back to the UK to visit. He came back last year as well, around the same kind of time. And it's kind of the first times I've really seen him in a very long time. I've had a very strained and distant relationship with my dad growing up, so I treasure the time seeing him, especially as it seems he's ready to try and have somewhat of a relationship with me. So of course I dropped everything to spend lots of time with him and my nan when he came. He was only supposed to be back for 3 weeks, so 3 weeks of that video didn't seem like that big of a deal, and I thought I was going to be able to at least put 1 or 2 up while he was here. And then on the 25th of March, my nan had a stroke. My dad had just popped out to the shop and I was downstairs with her when it happened. I knew she had a stroke in 2015, but it didn't really affect her. She didn't present like a normal stroke. She was just throwing up lots, and afterwards she didn't have any kind of severe brain damage or anything. And she was able to do everything she needed to do. She just was on blood thinners, whereas this was different. And it was very scary to watch. She had all the telltale signs of a stroke. I thought I was far enough removed from this. I thought it'd been long enough that I wasn't gonna get upset with filming this video, but it's understandable that I'm gonna get upset with filming this video. Obviously she got rushed to hospital. She couldn't walk, she couldn't talk, she couldn't swallow, but she seemed stable. We went home at the end of visiting hours, but we'd been told to keep our phones on loud just in case. And at 1 AM that morning we got called in and we rushed in. Me, my dad and my partner. We were there and it was horrible. We had been told to get ready to say goodbye. They just didn't know when, but they thought it would be that night. I ended up catching a couple hours sleep that night on a coffee table and my partner's lap, kind of spread across the do. They didn't have any family rooms available for us to get naps in. In the morning, the nurses were completely shocked at how well she was doing. I had a sneaking suspicion that this was a phenomenon where people get a lot better just before they die. If you haven't heard about it, nurses, I've heard a lot of nurses talk about it, and especially end-of-life nurses. But she just kept going. Over the next week, she had good days and bad days. The stroke affected her throat badly. She wasn't able to swallow or talk. She had a weakness on one side of the bed, so wasn't allowed of. She had weakness on one side of her body, so wasn't allowed out of bed. She tried talking lots and lots, and in her eyes, you could tell she knew what she wanted to say, but it either didn't come out at all, or it came out in garbled noises and words that didn't match what she was trying to say. It was so difficult seeing her this distress. We learned to communicate in some ways, but often we just didn't know what she was trying to say. She developed a chest infection on the first night due to her not being able to swallow properly. And then due to her heart already having a problem and becoming more weak, it led to fluid on the lungs. She developed delirium, mainly in the evenings, which was so difficult to deal with. She asked for a sherry one night because it's her wedding anniversary. She's been divorced for 30 years and only drinks one small sherry at Christmas, so this made us check her a little. Due to the delirium, they did some more tests because they thought there might be another infection somewhere in the body that was causing this on top of the chest infection. They checked for a UTI, obviously that's the most common one, especially when you're bedbound, but that wasn't the case. And then they found that she had a gallstone and it was infected and it was blocking the gallbladder. In a healthy person, they would have gone straight to surgery. It would have been no question surgery. But she was far too weak and she also had a DNR, so it was too risky. She wouldn't have been able to cope with the surgery. That we've now realised that she probably had the gallstone for a long time and it just got infected while she was in hospital. As she's been having issues eating for the last couple of years. We've been trying to get the doctors to listen and look into things and they didn't, and she became, by the time she was in hospital with this stroke, she was probably around 6 stone. I think at one point she dropped down to 5 stone, but she managed to get back up to 6 stone. But she was in too much pain to eat. She didn't have an appetite. She was nauseous for the last couple of years. She was also terrified of her diabetes. So she ate incredibly clean, which meant very little fat, little anything. She was already weak to begin with before the stroke. Things went on for a couple more days after that. She would have good times and bad times, but overall she was getting more and more distressed and weak and needing more oxygen. There were days when she didn't need oxygen, and then there were days where she heavily relied on oxygen. On the 31st of March, she managed to communicate that she wanted me to get into her bed and give her a cuddle. So I laid cuddling her and gave her head kisses for a while, trying to hide my tears. I think I knew this was her saying goodbye the only way she could. The next morning, we were called in at 7 AM to discuss Nan's health. She was getting weaker and weaker and was on more and more oxygen. I haven't cried about this in a while, but I also haven't had to explain what happened to anyone in a while, so that makes sense. The antibiotics weren't helping, and even if they did clear the chest infection, due to her not being able to swallow, she would get another chest infection pretty much immediately. And with her body fighting the 2 infections, she was far too weak to do the physio needed to try and get her throat to work. Me, my dad, and her best friend, who was also her medical power of attorney, had to make the decision to remove life-prolonging care. She wasn't going to get better, and the care was just prolonging her suffering. I haven't mentioned, but at this point she was also on a feeding tube because she couldn't obviously eat. She was having to have fluids through a IV, and and because of the chest infection she kept coughing and dislodging her feeding tube, so they had to keep replacing it, which was obviously also really distressing for her. The whole reason she had a DNR in the first place was because she didn't want, in her terms, end up a vegetable with people wiping her butt. So we knew it was what she would have wanted. We knew this was the likely outcome due to having the similar discussions on the first night, but it didn't hurt any less. They stopped the antibiotics, feeds and liquids, and instead gave her morphine and diazepam. We said our goodbyes, and then she spent the last day of her life asleep, with a small amount of oxygen to keep her comfortable. That evening we spoke to the doctors, and they told us she would have no more conscious moments before death, due to the medications keeping her comfortable. So we went home to sleep. It took my dad, her best friend, and my partner a couple hours to convince me to leave. I was already on the floor, lying down, having tics, and I felt very close to a seizure, but I just didn't think I could leave. I knew she would die when we left, and I didn't think I could cope with her being alone during those moments. But as I said, she wouldn't be conscious, and part of me thinks she was waiting till we weren't around so that we didn't have to see the last moments. She passed the next morning around 5 AM, peacefully in her sleep. I thought I needed to see it happen to believe it, but I realised seeing her body wouldn't have made anything easier. When we saw her, she was as close to death as it was already, and there's no doubt in my mind. The next couple of weeks between her death and the funeral passed in a blur. My dad took control of most of the organising and just let me do whatever I felt I could. I barely functioned for those couple of weeks. My birthday was actually 10 days after she died. I didn't know what to do or how to talk to anyone, but I had a small gathering of friends come over in the evening with a couple ciders and some pizzas, and we just goofed around like we were in secondary school again. During the day, my mum was going to take me for a picnic, but it was due to rain, so it ended up being a indoor picnic in the house. And a couple of days later, my dad took me to Bristol and we went to Wake the Tiger, which was a really cool and incredible experience, and I can imagine if you were high of some kind, it would be a very weird experience. The funeral was on the 25th of April, exactly a month after she had the stroke. The funeral was lovely, but so very difficult. I met people I'd only ever heard of before, heard funny stories about her from when she was younger. I kept a single flower from her funeral flowers and pressed it, along with one of the last tulips in her garden that she planted specifically for me because they were dark purple. And well, when they first bloomed, she was so excited to show me that she'd got dark purple flowers specifically for me because I would like them. Bless her, she hated that I was a goth. Absolutely hated it, but she loved me. Bless her. So that was 2 months ago. In those 2 months, we started going through my nan's things, and it has definitely brought me and my dad closer than we've ever really been. Trying to decide what to do with a lifetime of people's things is so difficult. If you didn't know, I lived with my nan, so I was very close to her. I had a bit of a difficult childhood with lots of change and living in various different houses. My nan and her house was one constant in my life that never really changed. I've lived here in this room that I'm filming this for a short period when I was 16 due to my entire family being made homeless, and it made sense for me to move in with my nan for the time being. And then in 2022 I moved in with my nan because my home was getting a little full with my siblings and my health was declining, and My nan was incredibly lonely after COVID. I've kept what I can keep / what I want to keep, and slowly me and my dad have been organising the rest of her things. What to keep, what to give away, what to sell, what to donate, what is simply just rubbish or recycling that just needs to go. Currently I'm half living here at my nan's and half living with my partner in his family. And then once the house sells, I'll be living with my partner's family fully. I will be receiving inheritance, which means I will be able to put a deposit down on a house, which I'm incredibly grateful in this current economic situation. However, it is interest until I'm 25, which is April next year. So it will depend on whether my birthday or the house selling comes first as to when we will be finding a house and buying a house, which is insane. I got to the point where I didn't think that was ever going to happen. So that brings you to where I am today, and that leaves the question, what's going on right now? I've always been quite open and honest on this channel about my mental health and physical health and the challenges I face. So in that vein, how have I been doing? Mentally, I've really struggled. I've had good days and bad days. My nan's death has reminded me a lot of my best friend's death. I'm still grieving them both, and it's difficult to balance. I've had a couple of relapses into self-harming behaviours, but I won't go into detail on that. That doesn't need to be online. My partner has been my absolute rock these past few days, as I've been having autistic meltdowns and shutdowns most days. This world feels very sharp and overwhelming. I get angry and I get sad and I get overwhelmed and I lash out or I hurt myself or I shut down and go mute. I've always had these issues and they always get worse when my mental health is worse. However, my selective mutism is the worst it has ever been. It has made the idea of making videos again feel impossible, because most days I have at least a couple of hours where I can't talk, and the idea of being on camera is also terrifying. I will say, since I wrote the script, I have been having less shutdowns. I have been very irritable and lashing out still, but my mutism is not as bad. I still have phases and I always will, and I'm learning to deal with my meltdowns somewhat. Another health issue that has got much worse is my tics. These are caused by my functional neurological disorder. I've never really spoken about this online, as it's always been something I can edit out of videos, and I've always worried about the backlash people with tics or Tourette's get online, and people thinking they're faking it. However, that is just how I am, and I have no control over it. Recently, they've got the worst I've seen them in many, many years. I don't know whether there will be any in this video or if I will edit them out, but I probably won't be able to hide them from the online world any longer. Since writing the script for this, I have also been diagnosed with stomach ulcer, and I am on medication for that, which is fun. I am in agony. While they have discredited stress being able to cause stomach ulcer, stress does reduce your immune system, so I do believe that stress made me more susceptible to getting this. The reason I got a stomach ulcer was prolonged use of ibuprofen. I've been tested for the bacterial infection that can cause it. I don't have that. It is definitely my use of ibuprofen, which I have been told by doctors for years to use ibuprofen to manage my pain, and while it doesn't really manage it, it is the best I can do. I had a flare-up and I had my period at the same time, so I was using ibuprofen as much as I was taking the recommended amount, but I was taking it for quite a few days, and I think that, on top of my immune system not being too good, caused the stomach ulcer. And I can tell you now, stomach ulcers are not fun. I was crying in bed. I have a very high pain tolerance due to being in pain constantly and my chronic pain being constant. This is some of the worst pain I've ever felt. Probably because I like spicy food. And before I knew it was a stomach ulcer, I was eating spicy food and I thought it was my IBS, and then I had one night where I had a cider and I had a really spicy dinner, and then I was crying in bed, unable to move, and we went to the doctor the next day, and that's when I found out I had a stomach ulcer. I am also finding that my idea of spicy and my stomach idea of spicy are very, very different. So I am eating things that I don't think are spicy and my stomach is in agony. So even korma is too spicy for my stomach, apparently. Who'd have thought? In terms of support for my health problems, I'm still on never-ending wait lists. The autism diagnosis waitlist, I'm at about 17 months, and I have been informed that the waitlist has gone from 24 months to 36 months. I've inquired about my FND referral, and I'm waiting to hear back from that to check that I'm actually even on the list, because I have heard horror stories of people waiting for years and then finding out they actually were never put on the list, and also to find out how long the wait is. But I guess that's just life when you've got complex medical issues. It's just a lifetime of long wait lists that might help or might be useless. However, between scripting this video and filming it, I have started my therapy, finally. So I have been to my first therapy session for my stabilization work. The first session was just this is what this course is going to be, this is who I am, introduction kind of thing. So I will be officially starting my stabilization therapy in about a week, which I have to do before I can go into trauma therapy, which is exciting and scary. So the stabilization work, I've been given a booklet. It looks like a lot of different things I've seen before. I've been in and out of therapy since I was 13, so I've seen a lot of the self-help tips and stuff, but it would be good to have a refresher and to also look at these alongside autism, because I have never done that before. In terms of what's happening moving forward, well, I need an income stream at some point, as currently I'm on disability benefits and will lose those when I move in with my partner. I can't work a traditional job due to my complex health issues, which sucks, but it is what it is. I have applied for PIP, but that's a minefield as to whether they will give you support, and it can take up to 6 months for an answer. So me and my partner are working on setting up an art business for me, and I have been doing some art over the couple months to do with that. My partner is helping with this because I can't do it by myself. I want to sell my art, and my partner had the idea of putting my art on apparel. It's taken a lot of convincing that my art is good enough for this, but finally I have, and I will be doing this at some point in the future. I will link the Instagram below that we have set up for this, and if you want to give us a follow and let me know what you think, that would be awesome. In terms of my YouTube, I want to get back to a video a week. I'm hopeful I can do this, and I'm going to bulk film some videos before I start uploading so that I have a fallback, because I didn't before, and that's why I keep having breaks. My videos will continue to be my art, however a couple of things will be put on pause while a portion of my art supplies are in storage. First of all, my miniature series, somehow that is still getting, the first one on that is getting so many views still. I don't even know what the views are on it now, but it's like 6,000 at least, which is insane. I've struggled to keep up with that anyway because I don't have a desk. So that will wait until I'm in my new house and I have a specific art studio area. Anything using my acrylic paints will be on hold, as I can't use those at my partner's parents' house without making a mess and probably getting in trouble. But I do have my paint pens, which I can do with minimal mess. I still get it all over my hands, but you know. And my daily doodle journal will be continuing. I will be making a separate catch-up video on that. I do imagine that I will make some content regarding my art business once it's up and running, but I don't want my content to just be that. I think that's all the updates I have to say, so let's get back to the drawing, I guess. I drew this in January because I like the iconography of death. It helps me accept that death is just a part of life. However, when my nan saw it, she said, "Are you drawing that because you're expecting me to die?" And of course I said, "No, don't be silly. And I definitely hadn't put any thought to my nan about the drawing other than knowing she wouldn't like it. She never did understand any of my graphic interests. But now I'm using this drawing to talk about her death. Is that ironic? I get confused by what is ironic and what is a coincidence. I really enjoyed doing this drawing at the time, and now I don't know how to feel. I can imagine some people might think it's weird for me to talk about my nan's death to this drawing, but to me it just feels fitting. I don't know what else I could do in this video otherwise. And I already had the footage, and I'm definitely not ready to do a video of just me talking straight at the camera. So this drawing was originally going to be designed for a t-shirt, however I realised once I tried trying to digitise it that it was technically possible, however it was going to be an absolute nightmare and take forever to remove all the background. Luckily I had only done this drawing before I tried editing it, so that I could then adapt how I was drawing to suit editing digitally better. Easier. Because I need to remove all the background and have all of one colour on one layer. Would this be easier if I did it all from the beginning digitally? Yes. However, I don't have a tablet and I'm not about to use a mouse pad or mouse to do a full digital drawing. And two, I want to be able to say that I hand draw the designs traditionally, so that's that. Anyway, here is the final results of my drawing, and thank you. So this has been a long one. The voiceover is currently 35 minutes. And I'm pretty sure the video is only like 20 minutes. So I'm not sure how that's going to work, but there's probably lots of bits I need to cut out. Anyway, thank you for watching. It's been a bit of a gloomy one. It feels good to be back doing this. I really enjoy doing this. And I guess I'll see you in the next one. Bye!